Hello and welcome to another tutorial where today we're going to go ahead and create this design you can see on screen. As always, there's links to everything in the description down below if you want to go ahead and grab all the requirements. If you want to get access to even more tutorials though, I post 3 more every single month to a catalogue of over 70 now over on my Patreon. There'll be a link in the description down below. And with all that said, let's get started. So once you created your canvas, the first thing I'm going to do is go up to my actions and I'm going to go to the canvas tab and I'm going to turn on the drawing guide. If you edit the drawing guide and you make the grid size just as large as you can until there's basically 4 little areas here, we can then see the middle of the canvas both horizontally and vertically. This will just help me lay out the design. If we then go to our layers, we've got an empty layer here. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this color here. It is the bottom of the second column. We're going to go to our selection tool, rectangle, and tap on color fill so it's blue and so we know it's working. And then just below our horizon line, we're going to go ahead and just fill in this box here. A little something like this. You can then grab your cursor if you need to. Using freeform, just drag down just a little bit till it sits underneath that horizon. And then tap on your cursor when you're done. Let's then go ahead and go to our layers and swipe back to the left and duplicate it. And the bottom one out the two, we're going to go ahead and go to our colors. We're going to grab the top color on the far right column and we're going to drag that into that space. So you won't see any visual difference, but if we then go to our cursor and we zoom in a little bit and we use the freeform option, if we drag this middle node up just a tiny bit, that's the edge of the pool, and we can then just simply tap on our cursor when we're done. That is going to be the edge of it. Let's go to our layers and we want to go ahead and change our background color. We're going to go ahead and grab the second color on the top row and we're going to hit done. And we're going to carry on with the pool. We're going to go to our layers and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to make sure it's this color still in the top right of the palette. We're going to go to our brush library and we're going to use the option of calligraphy and the monoline brush. We're going to go ahead and make that quite small. It doesn't really matter what the size is. We just want it nice and small. And we're going to draw in the corners here of the pool. So you can start over here, for example, and we just want to make our way somewhat over sort of the halfway point of this quadrant. So like a little something like this. So we're going to hold our pen down. We're going to go all the way to the edge of the pool over here and a little over the halfway mark. So a little something like this. And then you can just about see the top of that dot there. I'm going to go ahead and tap on it and I'm going to drag out to the left and put my finger on the screen just to make sure that that line is nice and horizontal. And if I drag my color into that space, we've got the top area of the pool. If we go to our layers and we swipe that to the left and duplicate it, and we grab the bottom one out the two. If we go to our colors and we grab, first of all, this color, the middle color in the far right column, drag it into that space. Again, you won't see any visual change just yet until you go to your cursor and we just drag this down just a little bit. And this is going to be sort of the edge of the pool, the tiling in between it and, of course, the actual water. But we want to grab distort as well and grab the far right node and drag that up just a little bit so it sort of disappears. It gets a bit smaller towards the end. And it's a little bit thicker as it gets closer to us down here. You can even drag this bottom left node down if you want to just make that a little bit bigger. And tap on your cursor when you're done. And if we zoom out, we can then take a look. We've got the side of the pool. If we then go to our layers and we select both of them, we go ahead and group them together. We tap on the group and we grab our cursor and we just want to move it above that edge of the pool. So it wants to sit above it, like it just layers on top. So tapping on my cursor there on the end, we can see it sits on top, but we also just need to tidy up this edge. So we're going to go to our eraser. We're going to go ahead and make sure our eraser is set to calligraphy and the monoline brush with any brush size, small, about 1%. We can just simply go ahead and in the group, we're going to go ahead and select the top layer, for example. So the top layer here in the group and just chop away that end. And what you do on one layer, you just need to make sure you do on the other. So I just chop through that end and I'll go down to the other layer and I'll chop through exactly the same point, and we'll do that again just to make sure it's right on that edge. And there we go. We can zoom out and we've got the edge of our pool, and we can go ahead and tap on the group. We can go ahead and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. We can grab our cursor. If we go to this option here and flip it horizontal, and then we go to this option here and make sure snapping is turned on, if we zoom out of our canvas, we can go ahead and just drag this over to the right hand side, and you should see 3 or 2 blue bars just to let you know you've moved it perfectly to the right hand side. and you want to hit the orange line up against the edge of the canvas. Tap on your cursor when you're done, and you've got your either side of the pool. But we want to change this color here before we flatten them down. So if we go to our layers, we've got this group here on the right, and we've got the bottom darker tone. If we go to our colors and we grab the very bottom right color in the palette and drag it into that space and let go, based on the lighting, this side would just have a little bit of a darker spot to it. Let's carry on in the pool area for a moment. We're going to go to our layers. You can actually go ahead and collapse those groups down if you need to. You can even flatten them as well. So you could tap on them and flatten them, and tap on it and flatten it to save yourself some layers. We're going to go down to this sort of color here, this sort of bluey greeny tone. We're going to create a new layer in front of it and tap on it and clipping mask it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the tone beside it at the bottom left of the palette. And your brush wants to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush. We need a fairly good size, maybe around about sort of 20%. And we're just going to, at the bottom here, go from left to right, very sort of hard to start with, and then blend out. Get really nice and light with your pressure and just blend that out. So you create a bit of a gradient here at the bottom, and that just needs to run up towards here. This is the brighter blue that's going to be right in front of us, and until you get a little something like this. The next step is to then go to our layers and create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. We're going to go ahead and continue with the same color. We're first of all just going to make our brush size around about 11%. And we're going to go to the layer itself and change the blend mode from normal. And we're going to change it to the option of color burn. So scroll up to color burn. And we're just going to go ahead and go along this edge here a little bit. This is only temporary in a sense, but we're going to just go along that edge there a little bit. And then darken up down here as well. So just blend that out. This is kind of the shaded side of the pool. So I'm just going to blend that in a little bit more like so. We then need to go to our layers and create another new layer. Tap on it and clipping mask that also. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the purple tone to reflect a bit of the color from the sky. So we're going to grab the purple, the second color on that top row. Same brush again. And we're going to go left to right though across the top edge. So left to right and then just blend that out. And you kind of want to let it run just beyond the corners there of our pool. So just sort of blending it out into this space here. All of these layers will help us later on, just reflecting that sky. And then we're going to go to our layers again once more, create a new layer, tap on it, and we're going to go to the option of clipping mask. We're going to go ahead and change the blend mode of this layer to the option of multiply. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here. It is the 6th color on that top row. Brush size wants to be a little bit smaller, maybe around about 12%, just so we can be in control of it. And again, we're going to darken up this area here, going along here. Just like left to right, nice and horizontal. And you can punch that out quite a bit. We're then going to be, with a smaller brush size, very light with it, just over here, just a little bit of a shadow where the sort of, you can see the wall of the inside of the pool, just a tiny bit, like so. And then if we move over to the other side, we're going to be a bit more adventurous this time. I'm going to increase my brush size up to maybe around about sort of 15%. And just blend that down and blend that down. This is the inside wall of the pool and also sort of the shaded side as well. So you get a little something like this. It's slightly right-sided in terms of the heaviness of the color. Just going to go across that a little bit more. Next, let's go ahead and add a bit of a shimmer to the top of the water. So if we go to our colors, we're going to grab this color here in the bottom left of the palette. We're going to go to our layers and create a new layer, but we're not going to clip it just yet. We're going to go to our brush library, and under luminance for you, it will be the glimmer brush. We're going to make our brush size 58%. And at the sort of closest point towards us, we're just going to go left to right just a little bit with just a little bit of this color like so. Then reduce your brush size down to the 24% mark, and then just at the back here, just add in little sort of dashes of color and like sort of horizontal movements in the top surface of the water here, left to right, until you create a little something like this. Then we're going to go ahead and go to our adjustments and go to the option of motion blur. And we're going to push to the right hand side. And we're going to push this all the way up to about sort of 61% there. And making sure you're nice and horizontal, we can create some really awesome water ripples on the top surface. And then if we tap on our adjustments when we're done. Next, let's go ahead and add in the subject. So we're going to go ahead and go up to our layers. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and grab this color here, the 6th color on that top row. You're going to go to your brush library, and for you it will be under imported, but it will be the Go by Pool stamp. We're at 100% on size. It doesn't really matter, we can scale it down. So I'm going to tap in the middle of my screen. We're going to grab our cursor and using the uniform option, going to scale the subject down. We're going to zoom in, and we're going to position her on the edge of the pool. Now we want her to be a little bit smaller, just so that, you know, it makes the pool look a little bit sort of larger and grander. Now we want to sort of position it so the sort of point here where you've got the kind of crosshair of our drawing guide there just nicely hits the center, and her elbows also rest nicely on the top edge of the water until you get a little something like this. When you zoom out, you've got your subject. Next, we're going to go ahead and work on the sky before we add in our palm tree. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. So we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to drag it all the way to the bottom here, underneath the two layers here, which are the solid shapes of the pool. We're going to go ahead and we can actually rename this as well. I'll rename this edge of pool just so that we know where that is. Edge of pool, and then underneath we've got this new layer here. We're then going to go to our colors, and we're going to grab the fourth color in the top row. We're going to go to our brush library, airbrushing, and the soft brush. Probably around about sort of the 15 to 20% mark. It doesn't really matter. We're going to go ahead and probably a little bit larger than that. We're going to go ahead and just darken up the top left corner, creating a nice curve as we go, because our sun's going to be down here. You can bring that blue in and some of the extra tones, and also just lightly just push them around the top edge as well, so that you create this lovely gradient between the blue, purple, and then the rest of the colors that will be down here too. So just making sure that top edge is nice and blue like so. We can always adjust it later on. We're then going to go to our layers, create a new layer. We're going to change the blend mode from normal, and we're going to change it to overlay. And we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the color in the top left of the palette. And the brush size probably a bit larger this time, maybe about 25%. And even though we're going to have a sun here, I want this whole right side here to create a really beautiful transition of colors. And with this orange, it'll actually make a lot of sort of purpley, pinky tones and kind of red tones in the sky. So I'm going to brighten up the top right corner on this occasion, and then blend that out all the way across the sky, all the way to sort of the left hand side a little bit more, just to create some really beautiful variety in that sky. You can see the change there in the colors now. And I'm just pushing that across, creating all that different change in there, and it overlaps some of the blue. I'm being super gentle with my color and pressure. And there we go, we've got a nice little transition of color in the sky there too. We're going to go ahead to our layers and create another new layer, and also change this from normal and change it to overlay. We're going to make our brush a little bit smaller this time, about 18%. And we're going to go ahead and just go along this horizon here. So just back and forward, backwards and forwards along that horizon a little bit more. We're going to go ahead and just maybe brighten up this area here in the bottom right with just a little bit of extra color. Again, trying to now just punch out a bit more of these orangey tones. And then with a brush size maybe around about sort of, maybe even smaller than that, maybe about sort of 8%. Just streaking some really lovely light sort of streaks across the sky. So just creating some lovely variation in the tones. So just keeping it really nice and gentle, creating some variation in the sky, and you can create some brighter streaks across there. And then we'll do the same just here as well. Just trying to punch out a brighter area, about 6% now. Just trying to brighten up a streak or two in the sky. Lovely stuff, just to really create some variation. Let's then go ahead and add in our actual sun. So we'll create another new layer, change the blend mode from normal and change it to the option of add. We're going to go ahead and with the same color, same brush, around about sort of 9%, I'm going to introduce my sun just here. So I'm going to start off in a circular motion. You can see it turns into a beautiful sun straight away. We're going to introduce a bit of a circle shape first of all, and then blend that out nice and gentle, nice and sort of feathery, like so. And then we're going to go ahead and increase the brush size maybe up to about 15%, and then just increase that glow a little bit more and more towards the outer edges, and just expanding on that sun. I'm going to go up to about 18% now and just really expand on it, make it nice and bright in this area down here. And it should be a little bit warmer on your screen than it is, for example, on the camera, but down here will be just really lovely and bright. Let's then go ahead and introduce some clouds. So we're going to go to our layers and create another new layer. We'll keep this one on normal, and we're going to go to our colors. We're going to go to the purple tone, so the second color on that top row, and our brush wants to be changed to the option of textures and Dove Lake. I've been using this lately for clouds and it's awesome. So the first step is just to draw in some basic shapes, and then we're going to go ahead and use some highlight and then the smudge tool. So my brush size currently is about 9%. That looks okay to me. I'm going to go ahead and draw in a cloud here, and all your cloud wants to be is just like a random fluffy shape, of course. A little something like that. I'm going to go smaller than that. I'm going to go to 5%, and then I can drag that out to the right hand side Maybe just increase the size of this a bit more and push it out to the left. Down here in the bottom left, I definitely want to introduce like a really nice big cloud down here. So even though it's in the purple section, I'm going to go ahead and continue just to draw it in like this, and then one that runs right along our sort of edge of pool here and gets really kind of close to our sun, a little something like this, and then this one just above, just continue. And you can draw whatever you want here, as long as you just use the dove lake just to create those nice fluffy shapes. I'll show you how to adjust them shortly. So a little something like this. We'll then go ahead and same brush size, we'll create another cloud up here, and I'm going to make this one like almost like a longer one. So I'm going to create like a big mound underneath here and then just drag that out to the right hand side, just creating like a big sort of fluffy area up here. And you can just literally just sort of wiggle your pen up and down, wiggle your pen up and down. I'm going to just reduce the brush size again down to about 4%, just so I can be a bit more sort of precise with the shaping of this one. This one's got a little bit too sort of horizontal. Even though I want it to look like that, I want it to also have some like nice rounding shapes to it. And maybe just a tiny bit, a little bit higher than it. So a little something over here, just at the top. It's sort of very, very close to it almost. So I've got sort of three main areas diagonal from one another. We're then going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and switch it to this color here. It's the third color on that top row. And now anything that faces your light source, we're going to go ahead and just add in a bit of a highlight to. So your brush size wants to be a bit smaller now, about 3%. And this is a prime example. This faces this way, and that's where the sun is coming. So if the sun is coming this way, it's hitting the edges here. So I'm going to go ahead and just dash in a bit of this lovely brighter tone. I'm going to go ahead and go over the top of this one here too. And just anywhere that sort of faces our light source, it's totally up to you. You can be the creative here. You're just looking for the shapes that you created and let the dove lake just kind of create like a nice texture for you. And then we'll just dash in a few little areas back here, little areas that are just facing the light source. Essentially anything that you draw in now that's a little bit brighter is just simply facing your sun. That's just a simple rule basically. I can go ahead and maybe down here just, you know, introduce like another bit of the cloud that's just facing over towards our light source. Down here too, I'm going to go ahead and just create some big fluffy sort of mounds on the top, brighter on the right edge of these kind of shapes that I'm creating. A little bit brighter here, just where it's all facing our light source. That actually runs very close to the sun. Up here now, because the angle has changed, we're now somewhat hitting the underside of some of these clouds now. So I'm going to go ahead and rather than do the top edge, I'm going to do the underside and then just round off some shapes. So it's kind of the same thing you've just done, but it's just on the different area of the cloud. So I'm just now going to introduce some brighter tone here. I can even create like a little bit in the cloud where it's just maybe sticking out a little bit. We're going to do the same at the top up here. Introduce some brighter tone underneath the bottom edge of this cloud. You can leave some gaps. You can sort of really get creative with the shapes that you're making. Brighter, bigger, larger areas, some very small areas, whatever you fancy. I'm going to drag that out a little bit to the left, and then this extra little bit that I added just at the top here, go ahead and just dash in some color on the underside of that cloud. Now at the minute they don't look like too much, but if we then go to our smudge tool and we tap on our smudge tool and we go to the option of the medium brush under airbrushing, with my opacity set to about 66% and the size is about 3 for a minute, we're now going to get into the bit where we can make these lovely and fluffy and nice and streaky as well. So we're just going to go ahead and, for example, on the top edges, in fact I may even reduce that down to a smaller 3%, I can now just simply get in here and blur out some of the edges. But we want to leave some of the brighter tones at the top. So my kind of rule of thumb is anywhere that's not kind of facing the light source, kind of the back end of it, we can just get in here and now just fluff up the clouds and leave a little bit of that dove lake to just create those really awesome sort of quite fine details in the clouds. And I'm pushing off to the left. We're going to have a bit of a horizontal kind of look to these where I'm pushing them off to the left and then they're just blending and fading out. And this bit really is quite somewhat magical, really. It's awesome. It just makes the clouds come to life. You can get in there and you can blur out the top edge if you want to. See how I blurred the right edge and just left a tiny bit on the top? That's fine. I think sort of just try to bear in mind that you do sort of less is more in this example. So less will be more. We can push this cloud across as well, getting that kind of streaky look off to the edge of it. Oh, look at that. It looks like we've created so much detail sort of manually, but we haven't. We've just used a brush to create some sort of texture and then just blend out areas to soften them up, utilizing two sort of tools to create our clouds. Let's smudge this out even more still, leaving sort of some quite crispy areas here and there. Zoom out, look at your clouds, they'll come together very, very nicely. Lovely stuff. We can push that backwards. And you can also push your purples into your brighter tones as well. So you don't have to just have sort of the smudging be on the top area. You can smudge your purples in and allow them to have a bit of breathing room. So you can allow the purple just to take over. You know, I can change my mind at any minute now and just push up into here and kind of just push that in. Let the sort of darker tone take over. Down here, we'll smudge in a little bit of these colours to one another. Again, I can let the purple sort of take over if I need to, but also just keep that pushing going off to the left. So just pushing off a little bit, blending the two colours together and blending where you feel is necessary, and then just pushing. Push that off. Leave some of those crispy details, as I keep saying, and then keep zooming out as well. You'll end up with this really awesome scene. Lovely stuff. Blur these all in together. Blur them in. Can blur in a bit more purple. You can always go back in if you wanted to at any time. If you're not quite happy with it, just get in there with your brush and just, you know, add in a bit more purple if you feel that that's necessary. Here I'm just going to push in that little bit of streak across a bit more. Blend that out. And you can spend as long or as little as you like on here, but that is pretty much the end result here. We'll do the same up here. We're just going to go ahead and just smudge in the back areas of some of these and just push that into the purple, or likewise vice versa, push the purple into your brighter spots, and ultimately just make sure you're pushing off those purple streaks and just trying to create that really beautiful streaky sky. You know, this will look great, for example, here, where I'm just going to push this off to the left, then leave it crispy and allow it to have some really awesome detail with just a minor bit of smudging on there. Just smudge out that edge a tiny bit. Push this one out. This one will look nice because it will sit right beside that. And then we can just blend in some of these details. This is a perfect example. I just sort of, you know, messing around with different brushes, seeing what brushes give you certain sort of textures, and then just seeing, well, hang on, if I use the smudge tool here, what does this look like? And I ended up creating a style of clouds that I am really, really enjoying. Really, really like this kind of effect. Because with the smudge as well, you can make stuff, like I keep saying, nice and sort of soft and fluffy, but then you get the balance of then this odd tiny bit of crispiness. And with Procreate, we can utilize the tools we've got available to us to speed up processes and, you know, create different variations in things. Rather than use the clouds brush, we can, you know, do this, and we've got the opportunity now to manipulate it how we want it. So let's then just streak this one out as well to the left, streaking this one out as well. I like that streakiness. It just kind of looks like the wind's caught it a little bit and just pushing it along. Or something like this, leave some crispy edges. I would argue, you know, try to just, if it's your first time doing this, of course, just sort of bear in mind, you know, less will be more. And then you can always go back in. You don't want the whole thing to be super smudgy and fluffy. You want there to be some crispy detail. So try to do less to start with, and then you can always go in if you feel like you've underdone it. You can always add more, but you can't necessarily sort of take away a lot of the time, because we are going to, of course, move on after these clouds. Now I'm just trying to make sure that the back end here with all the sort of purple, where you can see the Dove Lake texture is quite strong, just get in there and kind of blend them out a bit more. Just blend that out, and you can really push, like, you know, I'm whipping this cloud up into this space here. I'm really whipping the back end out of it, just pushing that up there. Blend out this area here. Push out. Get that lovely streaky look. Oh, that's awesome. I do need to go ahead and just blend in a bit more of these areas up here though. They've got a little bit too sort of sharp. I'm just going to push them together. That's lovely. Happy with how that looks, and we've got a lovely sort of underside of that cloud. Now what we're going to do is we're then going to go to this layer and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. And the top one, we're just going to simply scale this up nice and large. So I do this quite commonly. If you scale up your clouds, for example, like this, make it nice and large, and then you try to then zoom in and just sort of position some of the larger clouds in maybe some of your gaps. So for example, maybe I could go ahead and position this one up into this sort of space here. We're not necessarily looking to fill in every gap, but what we're trying to do is, if I leave that there, and I'm primarily focusing on this area here, if I then go to the layer and tap on it and lower the opacity down to maybe something around about 40 to 50%, if we take a look at that, we've now got an addition of like another cloud that's just not quite as bright as the others. And it's just adding more and more to the scene. You know, I can lower that down even further potentially, maybe down to about sort of 35-ish. And then I can go to that layer again, the one we drew our clouds on, swipe it to the left and duplicate it once again. We can go ahead and then I'll just reduce it straight away. I'll reduce the extra one down to about sort of 30 or 40%. Grab my cursor. We can zoom out because we need to scale this right up in size. And then we can see, you know, maybe I want to utilize this cloud a bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and even flip my layer there horizontally. I can then go ahead and scale this and move it around, see what fits my design. Even if it's just like a tiny bit just coming in from the side over there, it could be just that little extra bit. And even here, that's all I'm going to do. In fact, I'm going to allow that just to, I'm going to come in from this angle here, tap on it on my cursor, and then I can go ahead and maybe just grab my eraser using the soft airbrush under airbrushing, and I can get rid of just this bit here that just runs a little bit too close to my sun, and just let that sort of fade out. And then our sky's got some lovely extra little tonage in there. Next, let's go ahead and add in our palm tree. So we're going to go up to where our silhouette of our subject is and create a new layer in front. We're going to go to our colors and grab the dark tone again, so the 6th color on that top row. We're going to go to our brush library, and for you, it will be somewhere towards the top. This is where a collection of brushes usually goes. And we're going to use the palm tree stamps here. Now we're going to use palm tree 48 to start with. And the size doesn't really matter, but I've got it set to something quite large, around about sort of 45%. We're going to manipulate it in the middle. So if we tap in the middle of our screen, we can grab our cursor and we can move this over towards the right hand side over here. And I want that palm tree to kind of just live in this sort of space up here, a little bit higher than our sun and not quite in the way of it. Tap on my cursor when I'm done. I'm going to go to my layers and create another new layer. Go to my palm trees again. I'm going to go ahead and use palm tree 46. And again, all I'm going to do is just tap in the middle of the screen to drop that in. I'm going to grab my cursor and just move that over to the side there. So something for scale a little bit like this. And I'm just going to allow that just to sit just in this top left area here. Lovely stuff. And then tap on my cursor when I'm done. You want to just try and make sure there's a little bit of balance. So potentially I could just move this one just a little bit further off to the left hand side, just to balance that out a little bit more, tapping on my cursor. Now we can go ahead and actually add in some lighting effects to this in a simple way. If we pinch our palm trees together and then tap on the palm trees and add a mask, make sure you're on the mask so you'll know because it'll be this one highlighted and your color set to black. If you go to your brush and make sure you go back down into the option of airbrushing and the soft brush, and with a very sort of small brush size, maybe around about sort of 5%, if not slightly smaller, we can just lightly just take away this sort of left edge, for example, here, and it will kind of look like sort of the sun is just really sort of bouncing onto that surface, but we're technically kind of masking and erasing away. You probably want to be a bit smaller than that, maybe around about 3%. You can even just take away maybe a little bit from the back as well, just get rid of that harsher line, especially right down here where the sun's super nice and bright. And then the bottom side of some of these palm tree leaves, just erase the bottom edge, which would be facing our light source. So just get in there and just blend out a tiny bit of the edges, and you can, on these ones, for example, just really take away a bit of color. But you're actually introducing color. So you're masking it out, but actually revealing obviously a bit of that sky, and you're kind of adding in those lovely highlight tones that are just bouncing around the scene. So we're just going to take away a little bit from these ones at the top, maybe a little bit in there. You don't have to do every single one. Anything that's got a good solid bottom edge to it, like here as well, just taking away, and it just looks like it fits the scene a bit more. We can, try to maybe get up into the body a little bit there, and then your palm tree should look a little something like this, and it just looks so much better. We can then go over to this side here and maybe just a tiniest little bit just on the top edge, because this will reveal purple. So it's not going to be quite as bright, but just maybe a little bit here and there, just on the end of some of these leaves, and maybe a tiny bit up and down the trunk. I'm being super light and just adding in a tiny bit. We then also want to go to our subject, tap on her and add a mask. And we're going to go ahead and just add in some highlights in there, because we're not quite done with the highlights. It's going to get even brighter, but I want to just show that the lighting, for example, if I drop that down to about sort of 2%, it's just bouncing onto the side of her head here, onto her hair. So we're just going to sort of just brighten up this edge here by just masking away, revealing some of the sort of colours of the scene. You know, something like that, and maybe just sort of get a bit braver here, just trying to take out a little bit more colour. Then we're going to reduce the brush size down even smaller and just show how the lighting, about sort of 1%, is just landing on our arms. So let's, for example, just imagine that the lighting's just coming over the top of our shoulder, down our arm, so we're just drawing into this gap here, and then we're going to go over the top of her forearm here, round onto her elbow. That will also help us sort of convince people looking at this that, you know, yes, it's a stamp, but there's a little something else going on inside of it. So I'm just going to get rid of that dot that I've just added in there by accident. So we're just masking out this area here, just brightening up the top of our shoulder. And this will really just show how that lighting is just moving around the scene. The top of her elbow there. Lovely stuff. And even on this side, even though it's not quite in the lighting, we can go ahead and go down her forearm again, like so, and then just a little bit over the top of her shoulder and the top of her arm, just a little bit here as well. And when you zoom out, you can see so much more sort of definition in there as well. You could even, for example, just get in there and maybe doing the odd sort of strand of hair and something like that, just like a little curl or a little sort of flick with the hair. You know, bring this in here, for example, and maybe just show any kind of sort of detail on the top of the head. Lovely stuff. Let's then also add a bit of a reflection of her in the water. So we're going to go to that layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, just delete the mask. So swipe it to the left and delete it. But the bottom one, grab your cursor, flip it vertically, move it down, just so that those sort of edges all match up to each other. And then grab your distort tool and just drag the bottom middle node off to the left just to show how that lighting is coming across. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And then go to your adjustments, motion blur, and push from left to right just to blur that shadow out of her a little bit. So I've gone up to about sort of 25% there. I'm going to tap on my adjustments when I'm done. Let's then go ahead and add in the lens flare into this area so we can finalize sort of the sky. So we're going to go in our layers. We're going to go right to the top of our layers, and we're going to go right to the top and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It's the second color in that middle row. Your brush wants to be set to the option of illuminance, and we're going to grab the flare brush. The size is set to 64%, and we're going to go ahead and position a flare just over here. So we're just going to tap in this space here to add in the first flare, and I'm actually going to tap again just slightly lower than it. I want to tap just a little bit lower than that, just so we can create this sort of double flare effect here. We're then going to go to the blend mode for that layer and change it from normal and change it to the option of overlay, which will just sort of tone it down a little bit, but also give us that beautiful bright sun. And we can just drag it down just a tiny bit. I want it to just run through the side of her hair a little bit. So a little something like this for positioning. Tap on your cursor when you're done. We're then also going to go ahead and on the same layer, go to the option of bokeh lights here in luminance with the size set to about sort of 41%. We're going to go ahead and try to add in a sort of bokeh down here. This brush is a right pain, I do apologize, but you kind of want to just drag and just hope that you get the odd kind of really cool little lens flare, little something like that. If you really like it, you can even select it, but you can keep trying until you find something that you really like the look of, and you kind of just tap in and drag in just a few times just to see what kind of little effects that you can get in this space. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave mine with a lovely little flare like this. And you can actually go ahead, and if you've done it just about right, you can go ahead and turn off color fill and use the freehand option and maybe just draw around them. Then grab your cursor and just maybe move them into the position that you really want them in. So like a little something like this, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. Now let's go ahead and add in the reflection of everything into the pool. So if we go to our layers and we actually go ahead and tap on this purple gradient here that sits in the pool. If we then go ahead and swipe with 3 fingers down on the screen and go to the option of copy all, and we swipe down again and go to the option of paste, we can then go ahead and flip this vertically, and then we'll get this awesome reflection in the water. But if we want to, we can drag that down maybe a smidge, or we could even drag it up, but I would just leave it where it is. We can go to our layer. We can change blend mode from normal to overlay, which will just let through a bit more of a sort of bluey hue to it. And if we go up to our adjustments and we go to the option of motion blur and we push from left to right, we can just nicely blur that out. And you can go up to about sort of 24% if you want to keep some of the character of our palm trees, and tap on your adjustments when you're done. You've got this beautiful, beautiful reflection. And then the only thing I want to then try and do is if we go to our layers and we go up to the mask of our palm trees, we're going to go ahead and tap on the mask, color set to black, and our brush needs to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush, with a brush size maybe around about sort of 18%. I'm going to give this more of just a lovely big stroke over the top of that left edge, just to really add in some more brighter tones to it, really show how bright that light is. You can see how bright it is. We want to sort of really encapsulate that on the side there. And then reduce the brush size maybe down to about sort of, let's go down to about sort of 7%. Move over to the palm trees on the left and just give them a very light coat on that top edge of them, just to bring in a few more colors and just very lightly just take away some of that dark tone and introduce some brighter tone. Let's then also go to our subject and go down to her and the mask for her. And then we're going to go ahead and just overall just give a little bit more of a brighter coat to this by just taking away from the actual stamp itself. If we go ahead and we pinch with 2 fingers, we go full screen with 4, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. As always, please be sure to share your designs with me over on Discord and Instagram. Both will be linked in the description down below. A massive shout out to all of my supporters over on Patreon who help make these videos possible. If you want to get access to a catalogue of over 70 tutorials, with 3 more added every single month that just continues to grow, as well as have your name featured in videos, sneak peeks, early access, and much, much more, hit the link in the description down below and come and show your support. And if you like this video, you'll probably like this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.